Hello and welcome back to Learn the Bible in a Year for January 6th, 2026. And today for our Bible reading, we're going through Genesis chapter 11, verses 10 through 32, and also Genesis chapter 12 and 13. We're also jumping on Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 42, and then finally Psalms chapter 5. So let's not waste any time here. Let's jump right into the recap. Starting in Genesis 11, after Babel, we get another genealogy from Shem down to Abram. And if you don't know the name Abram, it's going to be changed to Abraham later, and that's a name we've all heard before, but we're not to that story quite yet. As we jump into this genealogy, we notice that the generations are getting shorter. People are not living as long. And we're zooming in on one particular line, and that's going to matter for the rest of the biblical story. The genealogy ends with Terah, who has three sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran dies while his father is still alive. Abram marries Sarai, and here's a critical detail. Sarai is unable to conceive. She can't have any children. We need to remember that because that is a huge deal. Terah takes Abram, Sarai, and Lot, who is Abram's nephew, and they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans and go to Canaan. But they stop halfway in Haran. Now let's make sure that we don't get confused here. So Haran, Haran, that is Abram's brother who died. But Haran, Harran, is the name of a city, and that's the city where they settle. Terah, who is Abram's dad, dies in Haran when he is 205 years old, and now the stage is set for something significant. God speaks to Abram. He says, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." Gosh, that's asking a lot, especially in that day and age, leaving everything familiar and going somewhere you don't even know yet. But then comes the promise. God says, "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse whoever curses you, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Gosh, that's quite the promise. So thinking back to Babel, which was what we read about yesterday, people wanted to make names for themselves. God tells Abram, "I make your name great, but not for your sake. You'll be a blessing to everyone." This is quite the opposite approach. And Abram, well, he goes. And he's 75 years old. He takes Sarai and Lot, his nephew, and all their possessions, and he heads to Canaan. When they arrive, God appears to him and says, "To your offspring I will give this land." Abram builds an altar there. He keeps moving, keeps building altars, and keeps calling on the name of the Lord. But then a famine hits. Abram goes down to Egypt. That seems to be where people go when there's a famine. And here's where things get messy. He's afraid that Pharaoh will kill him to take Sarai, who's his wife, because she is quite beautiful. So he tells her to say that she is his sister, which I've read this passage a bunch of different times. I still don't understand Abram's strategy of pretending like Sarai is his sister so that Pharaoh won't kill him, but I digress. It's a different time period. So Pharaoh does take her into his palace, treats Abram well because of her, but then God afflicts Pharaoh's household with disease. Pharaoh figures it out. "Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Take her and go." So Abram leaves Egypt with Sarai and everything they acquired. God's promise stays intact despite Abram's fear and deception. God's plan is not derailed by human weakness, although Abram showed a whole lot of weakness there. Jumping into Genesis 13, Abram comes back to Canaan, wealthy in livestock, silver, and gold. Lot's with him, also wealthy. But the land can't support both of their herds. There's a conflict between their herdsmen. Abram, being the older and technically in charge, would pull rank. Instead, he says to Lot, Let's not have quarreling between us or in our herdsmen. The whole land is before you. If you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I will go left." Lot looks around and sees a whole plain of the Jordan, well watered, like the garden of the Lord. So he chose that, pitching his tents near Sodom. The text notes that the people of Sodom were wicked and sinning greatly against the Lord, which might be some foreshadowing. After Lot leaves, God speaks to Abram again. "Look around from where you are, north, south, east, and west. All the land you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like dust of the earth." God tells him to walk through the land, and Abram settles near Hebron and builds another altar to the Lord. Abram's generosity with Lot comes right before God reaffirms and expands his promise. This is a pattern: trusting God, blessing others, and watching God come through. We'll see this a lot through the story of Abram, as well as through the entire Bible. Now, jumping over to Matthew chapter 5, and we're reading verses 21 through 42 today. This is back to Jesus on the mountain during his Sermon on the Mount, and he's taking the law and going deeper. He says, "You've heard it said, 'Do not murder.' But I tell you, anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." It's not just about the act, it's about the heart. Now, maybe we've all heard this before, but this is brand new information for all of those who are listening to Jesus. Their minds would have been totally blown. Jesus goes on, "If you're offering your gift at the altar and remember your brother has something against you, leave your gift, go reconcile, then come back and offer it." Relationship matters more than religious ritual. "You've heard it said, 'Do not commit adultery.' But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Again, Jesus is doubling down here. This is a heart level issue. If your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Better to lose part than your whole body itself. God is just using hyperbolic messaging here to make the point clear. Take sin seriously. He goes on with divorces and oaths. Jesus keeps pushing back to the heart. Don't just avoid breaking oaths, simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. Live with such integrity that oaths become unnecessary. Then the really hard one. "You have heard it said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth.' But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also," meaning they get to slap you on the other cheek as well. This isn't about being dormant, let me say to you. It's about not retaliating, not seeking vengeance, trusting God with justice. Gosh, it's so easy, and I struggle with this myself. It's so easy for us to want justice, and I want to be the one to deliver justice, but we need to remember that justice is for the Lord. All right, finally, moving on to Psalms chapter 5, David writes, "Listen to my words, Lord, consider my lament. Hear my cry for help, my King and my God, for to you I pray." He prays in the morning, lays his requests before God, and waits expectantly. David knows God has no pleasure in the wicked, that the arrogant can't stand in his presence. God hates those who do wrong, destroys liars, and abhors the bloodthirsty and deceitful. But David, "By your great love, I can come into your house. In reverence, I bow down towards your holy temple." He's not coming based on his own righteousness. It's God's love that grants the access. He asks God to lead him in righteousness, to make his way straight. His enemies speak lies, their hearts plot destruction. Declare them guilty, O God. Let their intrigues be their downfall. So here's the interesting and sneaky thing here, right? We talked a little earlier about wanting to have justice for ourselves, but what's David saying here? He's saying, declare them guilty, O God. He has the correct perspective of justice, that justice is for God, it's not for us. Even though we desperately want justice sometimes, justice is for the Lord, it is not for us. Alrighty, let's jump over to our workbook again. We are working out of the Learn the Bible in a Year workbook. If you don't have a workbook yet, go ahead and pick one up. The digital version of the workbook is totally free, and there's also a paperback version of the workbook, which is what I work out of. The link to either one of those is in the show notes, so go ahead and make sure that you check that out. Question number 1 for today is from our Genesis reading. Abram let Lot choose first, trusting God's provision. And here's the question. When have you struggled to be generous because you feared that there wouldn't be enough for you? Ooh, this is a salty question. Goodness gracious. I think we can all think about times where we were like that. At least I can. Question number 2, and this is from our reading in Matthew. Jesus calls us to a higher standard than just external obedience. He addresses heart issues like anger and lust. Now, here's a question. What heart issue does Jesus need to address in your life? Right? That's a pretty, we're all expecting that question, right? What heart issue does Jesus need to break through in our own lives? Question number 3, and this is from our reading in Psalms. David makes prayer his morning routine, seeing God's guidance at the start of each day. And here's the question. How would your day change if prayer was truly your first response instead of your last resort? Ooh, a couple of salty questions today. Goodness gracious. Makes us have to actually sit down and think about it. That's fun. And then the final question, of course, is what is your main takeaway from today's reading? My main takeaway is how God interacted with Abram after he separated with Lot. I can totally empathize with the idea of if I give Lot, meaning if I was in Abram's case, if I give Lot first choice and there's not going to be enough for me, this scarcity mindset. But we serve a God who doesn't care about scarcity because he is God. And then God comes in and blesses Abram because he gave Lot first choice. What an awesome testimony there. And the quick fun fact for today, when God called Abram in Genesis 12, he was 75 years old. His journey of faith didn't begin until what we'd consider retirement age. So that's not really a fun fact, but it is a fact about this passage. So the encouragement here is that it's never too late to answer God's call to start a new chapter of obedience, no matter what our age is, whether we're old, middle-aged, or young. God does not care. All right, well, that is our reading for today, and I look forward to seeing you all again here tomorrow.